When the sun sets, the undead awaken. To slake their hunger, they feed upon the herd of unaware mortals. Right beneath our noses, the kindred clash against their rivals as they vie for control of the city of San Francisco. Are you strong enough to cheat final death and see another night? Vampire the Masquerade rivals expandable card game from Renegade Game Studios.
Welcome everyone to Vampire Wednesdays. I am Sarah Erickson, Director of Sales and Marketing here at Renegade Game Studios, and I am joined tonight with me as our game designer, Matt Hyra. Yay! How's it going, Matt?
Hi there. It's going pretty well.
Nice. So tonight we are going to be jumping into deck number 3 from the core box, the Brujah Deck. So we're going to do a deep dive into that. Matt's going to give us all sorts of fun information about the specific cards, how they work together, some hot tips for how to do some funky combos, and make sure that you're playing Brujah with as much brutality as possible, because that's the name of the game tonight. So that'll be very exciting, but I did want to give you a couple quick updates about the Kickstarter in case anyone here might be interested about any of that. So we have sent all the files to the printer. They are doing some essentially digital tests. So they put everything into their computers, they print out a few things, and then they show them to us to make sure that everything looks the way it should. So one of the images that we got back from the factory this week was actually for the upgraded token kits. And Desiree, who is helping us out on the back end tonight, has a picture of that she was going to show us. So Desiree, if you want to throw that up onto the screen. So these are the upgraded token kits, and you can see that they've got these nice rounded edges, and they're really like this nice, thicker, heavier plastic, so that as you're playing, you can tell each different player's tokens from one another, which is really important. So you'll notice they're the different colors. And this is also going to be important once we get to the point where we can play games together and start doing tournaments. You'll have to bring a whole different set of these, because if I really like, say, blue, and I only bring my blue tokens, but I sit down at a table and somebody else is playing blue, I'll want to make sure I have another color that I could swap to. So this is going to be nice because they'll all come kind of contained in a little box where you can make sure you have those with you when you go to play.
Or if you're really nice, you can let everyone at the table play with your awesome plastic tokens, because they're not going to have it. Only you are.
It's probably true.
If you're here listening to this stream live, you are the 1% of rivals. So let's give props where they're due.
That's right, for sure. Yeah, it'll be quite unusual to have these nice, fancy upgraded tokens, because everyone else will just have cardboard tokens, which will still look good, but they won't be quite as hefty as these. So
yeah, it's good to intimidate your opponents right away, because that is part of the vampire milieu.
That's a good point. You gotta get the table game going before the game even starts. It's important. So those are looking really good. And the next step for that is they're actually going to send us a copy of those, and we'll get to double check them, make sure there's no scratched parts of the paint, none of the molds look weird, make sure they're not hollow, like Matt's heart, things like that we want to make sure we don't have problems with. So those will be on their way to Dan Bojanowski, who's our senior game producer, and he's going to make sure they're just perfect and everything's good. If you want to watch a little video with Dan about the insert and the rest of the game components, check back on our YouTube channel for some of our past Vampire Wednesday events, and you can see him go through a box opening with Desiree and show off all the pretty insides. But we hadn't seen these yet, so we were excited to get those today. So it's coming along. We're getting pretty close to finishing up all that printing. We expect all of this to leave the factory in weeks. I don't know exactly what it will be, but it's coming along. We're pretty close. So yeah, should be good. Those are, one other update I had for you. We spent most of today talking about organized play. We won't tell you what we talked about yet because we are finishing up some plans, but it's going to be awesome. I am seriously so excited to tell you guys about it soon. And yes, I did say the word organize this time, if anybody's keeping track. All right, so let's talk about Brujah. I'm excited. This is one of my favorite clans because whenever I'm starting out a new game that I haven't played a lot before, I find that just the really attacking, really aggressive decks are easy to jump into and just play. So that's one way I really like to dive into a game. So Matt, take us through what you're thinking with this one.
Sounds good. Yeah. The Brujah is the beatdown deck. They like to serve it up. And yeah, we're gonna look at those cards. So yeah, I guess Desiree, go ahead and show us the starting 3 cards for Brujah. And these will be familiar to anyone who has seen the Kickstarter or played on Tabletopia and whatnot. So Hydra is the highest BP blood potency Brujah currently. And so that makes him the default leader, but of course you'll have your choice once you get the game on who you want to be the leader. So the Brujah specialize a bit in physical attacking because physical attacks are the attacks that are going to do the most damage, and they like to do the most. They like to just deal raw damage as fast as they can to their rival, but they don't mind attacking just targets of opportunity as well. So I'll get back to Hydra in a minute, but let's just kind of talk through the 3 cards all at once. So the Turf War agenda card is an agenda that an aggressive player will want to use, and it shines in 3 and 4 player games, but it is perfectly suitable for 2-player games as well. The top line of text says, when you defeat a non-rival character, gain 1 agenda. So if you've read the core rules, you know that when you defeat a rival character, you automatically gain 1 agenda. So this is telling you that you get the same treatment whether they're a rival or not. So if you're someone who doesn't mind attacking other people, then you're going to profit from that, because some people might have some small characters out. Maybe they've left a small blocker out. You can just pick off those characters and start gaining more agenda. And it's especially good against someone who calls you rival, right? You want to make sure the person who holds your rival token cannot mount a good offense or defense, and you might as well profit with some agenda out of it, okay? So that's that first line of text. It basically means no matter what character you defeat, you're going to gain some agenda, okay? And then the second line, when you defeat a character with 5+ BP, gain 1 agenda. Now that's additive to that first line of text. And it's also additive to the core game rule of gaining 1 agenda when you knock out a rival. So if you knock out a character who has 5 BP or higher, you're basically going to gain 2 agenda. Now, 5 BP means the number in the upper left-hand corner. Like if you look at Hydra, he has a 6 BP, so that makes him a 5+. It is not based on their current blood. So if Hydra was at 1 blood, and someone took him out, that's still defeating a character with 5+ blood potency. Does that make sense, Sarah?
It does. And what I think is really interesting about this is that it really changes the dynamic at the table too, because a lot of the games, you'll have people set up these little mini groups together where they have sort of a friend at the table, not necessarily friend, more like a frenemy, temporary alliance that they'll be working with to try and take out their rivals. And as soon as you throw a Brujah player into the mix, because of this agenda, you blow that up. You can't really trust them at all, and so it'll really potentially change the way that works.
Yeah, as you can see in the art on Turf War, like the whole street is on fire and there's some bodies laying around. Doesn't matter whose bodies they are, the Brujah is just going to profit no matter what. So, and the reason for this agenda being this way is, we could have made an agenda that said, when you defeat a rival's character, gain 1 agenda, right? So that would give you 2 agenda when you took out a rival. The problem there is you would be so focused on your rival, because that's where all of your agenda would be coming from, that you would you know, that player would be on their back foot the entire game. So we wanted to kind of open it up a little bit where, you know, you can you can definitely find people who you are going to be pissed off at no matter where you look. So you might as well profit from that instead of just trying to hammer one person the entire game and give them a bad time. Or, you know, maybe they can make a comeback, which would be amazing, but, you know, a card like Turf War kind of spreads it out a little bit so that no one is completely under the gun from moment one, right? You know that they're going to be, the Brujah will be distracted sometimes away from their rival. Of course, they're going to go after their rival when push comes to shove, because they can win those instant victories by knocking out, by removing all of their rivals' active vampires from play, right? Putting them all into torpor. So how do they do that? Well, certainly the Brujah specialize, like I said, in physical attacks, and that's reflected on Hydra there. Usually the leader of your team is like a reflection of your team. So 2 physical, 1 social, 0 mental. And he's got celerity, potence, and presence. So with the attacker ability of pay 1 blood, draw 1 card. Now, that is another theme of the Brujah, is they are willing to spend their own blood to get their way, okay? And if you skip over there to the House of Pain, you'll notice that that particular haven has a leader ability. Attacker, discard 1 card, your leader deals +1 damage to the target. So Hydra himself can fuel the discard that you're going to need on the House of Pain itself. So you don't have to, obviously, use the attacker. You don't have to use Hydra's ability every time if you've got cards in hand. But if the cards in hand are ones you don't want to discard to do an additional point of damage, maybe you want to use Hydra to draw an extra card. Drawing cards is always going to give you extra options. It's going to allow you to make attacks into your opponent's havens, because they're going to be protected by secrecy. You might have to discard a card to overcome that secrecy, or convince someone else at the table to do it for you. But because the Turf War agenda is looking for defeats, right? You're not getting any points if you don't defeat them. So you really want that damage to pile up as fast as you can. And House of Pain is a really good way to do it, because that's just an extra ability. Your leader has that ability when they're an attacker. It's the same as Hydra. So you can use Hydra's attacker ability, and then you can use the House of Pain. You could also use the House of Pain first and then Hydra second, doesn't matter. They're both abilities you can use during the combat step. So that is the basics of that. And I should mention stuff about the disciplines that Hydra has. Those are the disciplines of the Brujah. So celerity, that is going to make them maneuverable in combat, so offensively and defensively. It's good. It's really good both ways. Potence is really all about dealing lots of damage, and you'll see some examples of that soon. And then presence also is kind of their intimidation factor. You know, there's a little, they can do a little bit with presence is creating an emotional response in someone else, and so they can certainly do that just with their you know, their menacing attitude, I guess. Is that why you like them, Sarah? Because they're so menacing, like you are, you know?
I am. Yep. No, I gotta say, I'm Melkaven all the way. But if I were
Fair.
just starting out, I would be interested in Brujah
Right.
to start with.
Right.
I think I'm probably gonna end up playing a Melkavian Brujah deck. So you just never know which direction the Molotov cocktails are coming from.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that can be pretty good. And yeah, to that end, let me mention, so notice that on the House of Pain, that extra damage that your leader can deal as an attacker is not typed. So any damage you do, whether it's physical, social, mental, or ranged, will do +1 damage. And that can be very important, as you shall soon see, because the Brujah are also the big guys on the block. They've got the highest cost characters in the game because they just like to dominate the combat. So Desiree, if you could put up the 3 lieutenants of the Brujah deck, that would be cool. And of course, as usual, if anyone has any questions about anything you see here or don't see here for that matter, feel free to post them and we'll definitely get to your questions. So, all right. So, unlike most clans, the Brujah have multiple multiple 5 blood potency characters. So these, and you'll notice that 2 of them have that similar pay 1 blood. So if you were if you thought I was lying about being willing to sacrifice their own blood to get their way, this is proof of that. So they don't mind shedding their blood if it's going to mean a victory. Okay. Brother in the middle is kind of the ultimate support character. He's got a party ability where he can exhaust himself to cause an attack within that party to deal +1 damage to the target. And of course, as a party ability with an exhaust, it's not an action, and you can use it after you see what kind of defenses your opponent has. So sometimes you might be like, oh my gosh, you played a defense, my attack needs to do 1 more damage to get that crucial defeat for my turf war. I'm going to exhaust Brother, and that can get you over the top. So as you can see here, these abilities are all about attacking. Not every Brujah character is about attacking, but most are, because that's just their thing. They're a beatdown deck. Now, of course, when you're attacking, you do have your opponent will oftentimes have the opportunity to block. And sometimes those blocks are not what are something you don't want to see, because they might be blocking with a small character that isn't really part of their overall strategy. You would have rather have taken out their big character to slow down their agenda producing abilities. So somebody like the Cossack there can cause this character's next attack this turn cannot be blocked. So, you know, if somebody's got like the Prince of the City out there with 1 little guard, and you want to take that title away from them, the Cossack might be the way to go, because you can just brush you can just say no blocking this time. I'm coming in hot. So
yeah, very versatile. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And
so
of course, go ahead.
We did actually have a question from chat. So
Excellent.
Awesome is Coyote is asking, do you think in the future will there be kindred that have 1 or many disciplines that are out of clan? So I'm seeing that a lot of these disciplines are going to be the same in Brujah across the board, but is that something you've thought about?
It is something that we thought about, and that it is a possibility for the future. There are very few things I would rule out before the game is even released publicly. And so, yeah, it is possible that could happen. In general, we do like to have the clans actually mean something. So, and because we do allow splashing of different clans together, mixed coteries, you can get access to some other disciplines if you wish. I know that some vampire products in the past have been a little bit more liberal with the distribution of those disciplines, but keeping it to the core, the 3 core disciplines from the Masquerade, gives more identity to those clans. So when you do want to have another discipline in a clan, it might behoove you to find a clan that has that discipline and maybe shares some of the disciplines of the rest of your characters, so that the cards are going to be useful for the most characters possible. And of course, when you are mixing clans, mixing your coterie, as long as you control a Brujah, as long as you control a Malkavian, as long as you control a Toreador, you can play those clan specific cards. And those clan specific cards are very powerful because they have that restriction on them of only playable by that clan. But if you're a mixed clan, a mixed coterie, you'll have access to multiple clans special cards. So I would say that we're not ruling it out. We're not there yet where we're doing it, but it could be, especially if we have higher BP characters. That can certainly happen. One other thing is that we do have the citizens in the city deck do have a variety of different disciplines. So sometimes you can end up with an extra discipline that wouldn't normally be part of your clan because you've grabbed a citizen. And future city decks will have a different and new variety of those disciplines. So eventually you can kind of get there even without having, you know, Brujah with blood sorcery or something crazy like that, you know.
Nice. Yeah. Good question. All right.
Yeah.
So back to these 3 Brujah cards we're checking out.
So let's talk Beretta. So another thing about these 5-cost characters is if Hydra is not someone you want as a leader, like a 5-cost character is a pretty good leader as well. Brother is more of a support character, so not really leader material, but the Cossack with that ability to prevent blocking is a fine leader. Beretta is also an interesting leader. Now, Beretta, as you can see in her art, likes to use her gold-plated Desert Eagle. Apparently, that's a 50 caliber handgun. As I've seen Sarah's, it's chrome though, so she
right
fires
by
it
my
all the time.
bedside table.
Yeah, that's right. She lives in Montana, so it's legal. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So Beretta is an interesting character because if you've paid attention to the ranged attacks, there are a few. There's not a ton in the first set, but as time goes on, there will be more. There's things like the 38 special and the Brujah special drive-by. Now, if Beretta, keep in mind, if Beretta is your leader, you can also augment the House of Pain to augment her ranged attacks. And the special thing about ranged attacks is they can't be blocked except by guards. So once again, you know, the Cossack, of course, can make any attack not be blocked, but Beretta makes very good use of the firearms. And firearms don't do a ton of damage because they're not being augmented by any vampiric ability, right? You're just pulling a trigger. Anyone can do that. But Beretta, being that she's a Deadeye and a literally a Deadeye, I should say, pun very much intended.
Oh dear.
She can increase the damage of a ranged attack, which makes it, you know, an unblockable damage coming at someone. And there are not very many ranged defenses as well. So that makes her a very interesting leader. Granted, there are not a ton of ranged attacks right now, but in the future, there will be more.
Yeah, I do think it'll be really interesting as we get some more expansions to see how the power levels of some of these cards change. Like, I know that the very first expansion that we've already talked a little bit about, well, actually, we've just spoiled the name of it in the picture, really, but that is going to add a whole bunch of new cards, and you're already done with that expansion. You're working on the one after that and the one after that. So it'll be fun to add all these extra cards because they do all these cool things, and you're seeing into the future and seeing that, but we're just looking at these cards. So there's more to come.
Yeah, and expansion content will have roughly the same amount of clan-specific cards to generic cards. Of course, some generic cards are actually discipline-based, but that doesn't mean you can't use them. You know, for instance, if there's an attack if there's an attack card that has a discipline ability, you can still play that card even if you don't have the discipline ability. It's just that discipline ability won't apply to that attack. So I'm not sure why I'm telling you that, but I basically just wanted to say that there's a lot of generic cards out there. To get the best use out of them, you're going to want the particular disciplines of them. But of course, like guns, there's no discipline on guns, right? Because it just doesn't take any vampiric training to pull a trigger. So anyway,
that makes sense.
But of course, yeah, so you're seeing all this blood payment for things, so there's got to be a way for the team to recover a little bit. So Desiree, if you could put up a few more cards to the next set.
Yeah, they are obviously fine with giving up their own blood. There's a lot of pain going on with these ones, so making up for that sounds helpful. You don't want to push yourself too far.
And you know, because they have big bodies, it's fine to give up a little bit of blood on occasion. So
makes sense. They're pretty beefy.
Yeah. All right, I think we're waiting. There we go. So I was talking a little bit about, oh, you've spent all this blood, now how do you get it back, right? Well, the spoils is one of those things. So, when your little hunting party of vampires goes out and knocks someone out, who says that everybody can't get in for a few gulps of blood, right? So the spoils is an unhosted ongoing action. When an attacker in your coterie defeats another character, each character in the attacker's party mends 1 blood. Oh my gosh, it's like a little synergy there. So, if you want to go big on those blood payment abilities and take out characters in 1 shot, well, this is a good way to heal your guys up as well. If you can get more than 1 of those in play, my goodness, you're just gonna like be all over the place healing, or mending, I should say. There's also a character in the Brujah called Johnny, who allows you to when you if you attack and burn a city deck citizen or mortal, you can actually heal everyone in the party for 1 instead of just having 1 character heal for 2 or 3. So that's another way that they can heal back some of that lost blood that you may have spent. Now, of course, I've also so we've seen the characters. So these are like some of their good cards for doing things. So Sucker Punch is another way to get around those pesky blocks. I mean, sometimes you might want to go for a character with a BP 5 or higher because you want that extra agenda. Whether they're your rival or not, anytime you're taking out a character with 5 plus BP, you're gaining 2 agenda. And anytime you can gain 2 agenda, you are very happy. Getting around blocks can be very crucial to that strategy. So the Brujah have a very effective Sucker Punch, which is a Brujah only card, as the spoils is. Very efficient, 2 BP for 2 damage, but the targeted is the important part. If somebody blocks, you can ignore that block, so they would have exhausted that character for nothing, basically, because you can retarget that attack to whoever you want. You could go after your original target, or if you really want to, you can say, you know what, I'll just go after the blocker. You can basically target anyone who's a legal target in the party. So
that
that's
seems
a fun
very
one.
powerful.
Yeah, this is also a fun one to use when you're going after, let's say that someone controls the prince, and as we know, the prince, if you're the prince, you have secrecy 0 and cannot go above it. You might want to make an attack into an opponent's haven and not want to pay to overcome their secrecy, especially if they have additional secrecy. It could cost you a lot. But if they have the prince, you can attack the prince without discarding any cards. And then if you put your Sucker Punch face down, they might block because they don't want to lose the prince, but then of course you can flip your Sucker Punch and target anyone there, because you've already overcome the secrecy by declaring your attack against the person with 0 secrecy, right? Does that make sense, Sarah?
Yeah, that's sneaky. I like it.
I'm pretty sure you've done that to me a time or two, because you're so ruthless. All right.
It's true.
So Sucker Punch is nice for those surgical strikes, but when you just want to go in there and smash somebody for maximum damage, Throat Rip is one of the big physical attacks in the game. So it is a 4 BP, which is not difficult for the Brujah because they have plenty of 4, 5, and they have more 5 cost characters than anyone else. So that 4 is not going to be tough. 1 inherent damage, but plus 1 damage for each character with potency in this party. So if you can get together a big party of like 4 people, each with potency, you're going to do plus 4 damage with that Throat Rip attack. So you could be doing 5, you could be doing 6, depending. You get to add your physical score in there as well. So you could get up to 6 or 7 damage physical. Might take you a little while to recruit all those people, but a Throat Rip is going to be the capper to any Brujah strategy you got going.
Yeah, that could really add up. That sounds pretty intense.
Cool. Yeah, let's see some other, what else do we have? Maybe some of the city deck cards or something. So yeah, so I've talked a lot about being aggressive against your foes, but the city deck also provides some opportunities as well, I guess, or whatever the next suite of cards is. I can't remember. Yep, cool.
So while she's putting those up,
Here we go.
what clan do you think would go really well with Brujah if you were going to do a 2-clan deck?
You know, interestingly, the Toreador is not too shabby because they have celerity and presence as well. So if you're you could get a lot of action going. So basically those disciplines are going to work pretty well together. Anytime you need presence, or anytime you have a card with celerity or presence on it, it's going to be usable by anyone you've got, because most of those characters are going to have one or both of those disciplines. Other than that, I guess if you were trying to maximize your throat rip, you might want to grab another clan that has potence, which I don't remember who has that. Probably, I'm sure there's some clans coming soon that will also have potence. So I can't remember.
Yeah, that's
Right.
fair. That's fair. You're working on several clans at once, so
Right.
understandable.
Coyote asked a question here, I think, about throat rip. If you had all 7 members of your coterie, it could be +8, +9 damage. Yeah. It would be rather difficult to get out that many characters. You would have to have a lot of weight. You'd have to gain a lot of prestige to be able to recruit all those guys. Because remember, you've got a 6 and 3 5s. Well, right there, you're already out of prestige. That's 21 prestige, right? So it is unlikely that you're going to be bringing out more than, I don't know, it probably is not a great idea to spend more than like 16 of your prestige on characters. So maybe you could get like a 6, a 5, and a 3, something like that. That's like reasonable. If you had a prestige engine, like let's say the Prince of the City, you might be able to bring out a 4th and a 5th eventually. But of course, the Prince might just win it for you anyway. So anyway, I wanted to show you. Yeah.
Well, quick question on that one still. So what's the most that you would need to be able to take out any vampire in the game?
Well,
I feel like at 8 or 9, you're probably already crushing anything
8 or 9
that would be on the board.
Yeah, I think an 8-point attack, for instance, if Hydra was at full health at 6 with a physical resistance of 2, it would take 8 damage in one swing to take him out, right? So
Yep.
that would be a very strong attack to go like, I'm attacking Hydra with a physical attack. Like, people would look at you so funny, but then they would look on in horror as you revealed 8 damage, So,
For sure.
So there you go.
Okay.
So I wanted to show off a couple. So I've talked about the Brujah, all about the beatdowns, right? And they just want to get that damage in as much as they can. So they're going to spend a lot of their time in the streets, right? And what else is in the streets? Well, you got the city deck out there. So you're going to have some mortals and antagonists and even the Prince title. So I put the athlete up there because the athlete, if you defeat the athlete and attach it, you'll gain 1 agenda, but you also gain 1 physical stat. So you could imagine if you get the athlete onto Hydra, that's going to be a 3 physical without even a card, right? You might be able to take out some guards and things like that without even playing a card. And that is a dream, because if you can save cards in hand, you got more cards to pitch to the House of Pain, right? Indeed. So that's a very good one for, So I'm just talking like general things that the Brujah might want to do. You might want to grab the athlete. It may not be your best bet to go attacking someone in their haven on round 2 or 3, because you're going to be discarding cards. to try to, attack into their haven. They probably have most of their characters at full health. They might have a blocker. They have a full hand of cards. They might have a reaction. So sometimes you want to look for things other than just, spending all your cards to go beat somebody up, right? So there are other things you can do. Now, while you're out there in the streets, other players, because you're the Brujah, people are expecting the beatdown to be hitting them at very shortly. So players often will be rather shy about coming out in the streets to do things like gain the Prince of the City title. So it is definitely a fun strategy to intimidate your opponents a little bit and then grab the Prince of the City deck, or the Prince of the City card, especially if you've made attacks against you've made an attack against someone and they've tried to block you. They're exhausting cards, right? And when you go for the Prince of the City, each of the other players gets to make an attack against your claimant with a ready character. So if they don't have any ready characters, well, then the prince is pretty much going to be yours. And because your characters are so big, like big and burly, high BP, you're going to be able to survive those attacks against the claimant, and then you'll be able to survive as the prince for a little while. And gaining that extra prestige and agenda is just going to help you. So if you can't beat them, show your power early. That will put your opponents on the back foot, and then you can maybe just take the prince and hold on to it, because they will be loath to come back at you, because of course the Brujah do have a couple cards that are generic cards, but cards in their pre-con deck, like Slap in the Face, where they can strike back at you physically when you make a social or mental attack. So sometimes they can do damage to you even when it's not their turn. Now, speaking of damage when it's not their turn, the Special Affairs Division. These guys are kind of nasty. They're kind of a clock on the game. They're going to cause some bloodshed, and the Brujah might not mind that too much, because if the Special Affairs Division can deal a little bit of damage to each of the other clans, that's going to make it that much easier for you to come in and finish those characters off, because of course the turf war requires you to defeat the characters, not just knock them down to one. That's not good enough. You have to defeat them. So the Special Affairs Division can kind of be doing a little bit of work for you. Now, if you're super close to winning, it might be fun to, take out a Special Affairs Division just so you can gain that agenda. But, causing a lot of damage to your, using them to cause damage to your foes, and of course yourself, or I should say just not attacking them, will mean that more players are going to take damage to their characters. And the more damage that the characters have, the easier it is going to be for you to make your successful attacks and defeat people.
I can see how that could really domino. Like, you're getting closer and closer to defeating people, and then a Special Affairs Division hits the board. It knocks people down just a little bit more, and suddenly you can just wipe out a bunch of people, gain a bunch of agenda, and just win the game.
That's right.
I think that's probably something that people will be very careful to watch for when playing against Brujah.
Right. Yeah, the Brujah, some agenda only works. Some agenda cards are hard to trigger more than once per turn, right? The turf war, you get 2 actions during your turn, and if you knock out a character with each of those actions, you will trigger that. You'll trigger that agenda gain each time you do that. So the lower you can get those characters, the better. There's other cards. I don't think I put them up here, but there's other cards that can do kind of that mass damage to people. Like I mentioned, the drive-by. That's a powerful Brujah only ranged card that can do 2 damage to a whole party. 2 damage to possibly everyone in the whole party,
Wow.
minus their physical, of course. And then they have a few things that also help. Like if someone is buried too deep in their haven, you can play a Smoke 'em Out. That also deals a little bit of aggravated damage, which is interesting if they're exhausted. One other card is Terrorize. It's a Brujah only mental attack where you actually exhaust every character in the party. So that's actually a combo that people can do. Is you attack into their haven using the Terrorize, you exhaust everyone, and then you smoke them out afterwards. And because all of those characters are exhausted, they're each going to take 1 aggravated damage. And if you can do a bunch of aggravated damage to people, you might get a couple of permanent kills, and those do count as defeats, of course, which again trigger the turf war. So, and you will also find if you are playing people who really like to go heavy on defenses or are playing equally large characters, it's possible that the Brujah could use the agenda card in the crypt pack called Drain Them Slowly, which gives you 1 agenda if you deal 1 or more damage to an opposing character, as opposed to knocking them out. Okay, so
that would be easier.
Yeah, it is easier, but of course, not when you don't knock someone out, you haven't gained that crucial board advantage that you might want to do. But sometimes that may not be your complete goal. You might want, you might not want your rival or whoever you're attacking to lose characters, because you might need them to, temporarily conspire against the person who might have a lot of agenda. You want to knock that person down a little bit, so you might not want to knock out people constantly, because you want them
like
to,
I said,
dirty
I'm
work.
not sure who's gonna want to be friends with a Brujah, but I guess we'll see.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is true, because they have very little incentive to not attack whoever's the easiest target, right? They just want successes. So yep, so those 2 cards there are a fun little combo, and of course you got 2 actions, so you can make that work. And everyone in the haven, if you attack into someone's haven, everyone in the haven is part of the party, so you're going to exhaust them all, and smoke them out is a pretty good way to mess with people. So
Nice.
yeah, I think I don't know, I think those are all the cards we talked about, right, Desiree? Yeah, I think so. Okay, I think it's fine. Yeah, the Brujah,
Do you think they would play well with Ventru, but they could play well with anyone that has that potency discipline? That makes a lot of sense. So maybe some of the clans coming up in the future, which will be fine.
Yeah, actually, I was just about to look at something here. Whoop.
Ooh. Deep dive goes deeper.
I'm scrolling. I know. I'm looking through things here.
Nice. Is there any clan that you think the Brujah should be especially careful to avoid? Like if they sit down at the table and they see somebody, if they see somebody playing Toreador, should they be a little bit more concerned?
The Toreador, because the Toreador are equally proficient at fighting, they don't have the raw damage that the Brujah do, but they do have, because they have celerity as well, they do have some pretty good defenses against physical attacks, especially. And their Steal the Spotlight, which is a Toreador only physical reaction, will actually cause the attacker to lose 2 blood, which can certainly hurt the Brujah a little bit. So the Brujah may want to be careful when attacking the Toreador, but of course, even if you're blocked, you have ways around blocks, as we've seen, but they do have some good defenses against that. The Malkavians Malkavians' best bet against the Brujah will be to cause the Brujah to lose some cards. And they have a conspiracy that can do that, and they also have a mental attack that can do that. So it might seem weird to attack the Brujah because You're probably not going to take them down because they're so big, but if you can knock cards out of their hand, they're not going to be able to make as much use out of the House of Pain Haven. They're going to have a harder time paying for the intel costs, gaining intel to overcome your secrecy. So that's something that the Ventru can do with like the Keeper of Elysium title, is they might be able to have 2 secrecy. And I promise you, as the Brujah, if you're spending 2 cards per turn to attack into the Ventru Haven, you are going to run out of cards very quickly. So there are some stumbling blocks out there for you, and those are times when it might be more profitable for you to do something like go for the Prince of the City if people have too many defenses up.
Nice. Well, we'll have to look at that more closely once people can actually get their hands on these cards and start playing, which should be soonish. I don't have an exact date, but we're definitely getting closer. Things are going in the right direction. So it'll be really fun to see people get to start playing. And then speaking of which, we will have an announcement next week on Vampire Wednesday about being able to play on Tabletopia. So make sure to join us for that, and we'll let you know more information then. And we're working hard here trying to get this game out for you and make sure that when you get it, it's a great experience. So got a lot of hands on deck working on some cool stuff, especially like I mentioned at the beginning, organized play. It's gonna be really important for this. And we have so many fun ideas and so many things already in the works. I can't wait to show everybody. So I think that's about all we have for this week. Anything else, Matt?
Good. I think we're good.
Awesome. Definitely. Well, thank you, Matt, for doing that wonderful deep dive about Brujah. I'm excited to get my hands on those decks for sure and see how they play. And thank you, Desiree, for helping out on the back end and posting those cards so we can all check them out. And then, of course, thank you everyone who joined us and watched all the way to the end. We are so grateful you're here. So have a wonderful rest of your week. We'll be back next Wednesday. We're going to be chatting about Malkavians, finally. And Dan Blanchett, who is one of our game developers and also part of Matt's design team, is going to be joining us to do that deep dive. So it will be fun, and we'll have lots of good stuff for you. So we will see you next week, 5:00 p.m. Pacific time on Vampire Wednesdays. Have a wonderful evening. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.